All right, so let's dive in. I guess you could say we are exploring Faller Archetypes today.
Okay.
This is that framework that comes from Coach Tony Figali's
Yeah.
coaching handbook.
Mm.
And it's all about, figuring out how you react to setbacks, not
Sure
fearing
now.
failure itself.
It's like having a personalized roadmap for dealing with those challenges. Once you understand your instinctive patterns, you can navigate those rough patches way more effectively.
So we're diving deep into all 12 of these Faller archetypes from the handbook.
Mm.
And
Okay.
you shared some notes with me highlighting a few that really
Yeah.
piqued your interest.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we can just start with the critic. You circled that one?
Okay.
Does that ring a bell?
The critic always striving for excellence,
Right.
but sometimes their own worst enemy, wouldn't you say?
Totally. They're all about self-improvement, which is great. But the handbook points out that this can lead to some serious self-criticism, even when others see their work as top-notch.
Right. It's that classic inner voice always pointing out flaws and downplaying accomplishments,
Yeah.
Their need for perfection can become a real stumbling block.
Yeah. The example in the handbook really brought this to life. Imagine the critic gets feedback on a presentation, and they zero in on that one tiny critique,
Oh, yeah.
completely overlooking the praise
Right.
for their creativity and in-depth research.
That's the blind spot in action, right? Their meticulous nature can lead to some incredible work.
Yeah.
But they often miss the chance to celebrate those wins because they're so focused on what could be better.
That makes me think about the flip side, their strengths.
Hmm.
What does the handbook highlight there?
Well, the critic's dedication to quality is undeniable. I mean, they push themselves and those around them to reach higher standards, and their attention to detail.
Yeah.
That's a superpower when channeled effectively.
Okay, so let's get practical. If someone realizes, hey, I'm totally the critic, what's like one little shift they can make to handle setbacks better?
I'd say practice some self-compassion. Instead of that harsh inner critic, try acknowledging effort and progress. Celebrate those small victories.
Makes sense. Now, you also flagged the performer in your notes.
Right.
What's the deal with that archetype?
The performer, always on stage, even internally.
Oh.
They crave that picture-perfect image of success.
So it's not about actually being the best, but appearing that way.
Exactly. The handbook uses this example. Imagine the performer pours their heart into a project and it tanks.
Okay.
Instead of accepting feedback, they'll blame external factors, anything to keep up that facade.
So they deflect, even if it means missing out on valuable lessons.
Right.
Is that their blind spot?
It is. While that unwavering self-belief can be motivating, it also prevents them from acknowledging their role in setbacks.
Yeah.
They might miss opportunities for growth by constantly shifting the blame.
And on the flip side, their strength lies in their ability to project confidence even when things go wrong.
Precisely. And that can be incredibly valuable in certain situations, like leading a team through a crisis.
Yeah. Right.
But the key is finding that balance. Recognizing when that need for a perfect image is actually holding them back.
Okay, so for someone who sees themselves in the performer, what's a tiny step they can take to deal with setbacks better?
Actively seeking feedback, resist that urge to deflect and instead say, okay, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
That shift in mindset can be a game changer.
You also highlighted the seeker, right?
Yes.
They seem to really resonate with you.
I find the seeker fascinating. They're deeply introspective, always searching for understanding and meaning.
They're the ones who overthink everything, right?
Yes.
Like in the handbook where the seeker receives constructive criticism and then spirals into self-doubt.
That's it. They absorb information and then get stuck in their heads, overanalyzing every little detail.
Oh, gosh.
It's like analysis paralysis on overdrive.
But their strength lies in their empathy and emotional intelligence, according to the handbook, is that their superpower.
Absolutely. They have a knack for navigating complex social situations and understanding people's motivations. They're often the ones that others confide in because they genuinely listen and connect.
So if someone recognizes themselves as the seeker, how can they approach setbacks in a healthier way?
I'd suggest setting boundaries on that overthinking tendency, maybe journaling to process emotions instead of letting them run wild in your head,
That makes sense, limiting that overthinking spiral. Now, you didn't specifically highlight this next one, but I think it ties in nicely with what we've been discussing, the anchor.
Oh, that's an interesting connection. How so?
Well, both the seeker and the anchor seem to struggle with self-reliance in different ways. The seeker gets lost in their own thoughts, while the anchor seeks validation from others, right?
You've hit on a key insight there. The anchor thrives on connection and reassurance. They look to others for guidance, often deferring to external opinions.
Yeah, the handbook paints this picture of the anchor calling all their friends after a setback, needing to hear everyone else's perspective before forming their own.
Exactly. It's like they need that external validation to feel grounded. Now, that's not inherently bad. Their ability to build strong relationships is a huge strength.
Yeah, they understand the power of community, which is amazing.
Right.
But like you said, it's about finding the balance.
Right. The blind spot for the anchor is that dependence on others. It can lead to them feeling lost and indecisive when they lack that external input.
So if someone's listening and realizing, wait, I'm totally the anchor,
Yeah.
what's like a small step they can take to become more self-reliant?
Start by practicing making small decisions, independently trusting your own gut feeling, even on something as simple as choosing a restaurant, can build that inner confidence.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, you also had the resistant circled in your notes. What stood out to you about this archetype?
The resistant is fascinating because they feel like they're always at the mercy of external forces, almost like a victim of circumstance.
They're the ones complaining about the rain instead of grabbing an umbrella, right?
Yeah. Yes. The handbook highlights their tendency to blame external factors rather than taking ownership, like that example of missing a promotion and blaming office politics instead of evaluating their performance.
So they give away their power by focusing on what they can't control. Where's the strength in that it feels a bit negative?
Well, their strength lies in their ability to weather storms. They can endure tough times, but it's that external locus of control that becomes the blind spot hindering their growth.
So if someone's relating to the resistant then, how can they shift their perspective?
By focusing on what they can control, it's about recognizing that even in challenging situations, they have choices. Maybe it's seeking new skills to improve their work performance or having an open conversation with their boss about their career goals. It's empowering to realize you have agency even when things feel tough.
Now, this next archetype wasn't on your list, but I think it ties in nicely with what we've been discussing, the strategist.
Yes. The strategist always thinking 10 steps ahead, planning for every possible scenario.
They're the ones with color-coded spreadsheets for their grocery lists, right?
Haha. That's a fun way to picture it. The handbook describes the strategist encountering an obstacle and immediately switching to plan B, completely unfazed.
So their strength is that ability to think strategically and adapt, making them excellent problem solvers.
Exactly, but like all archetypes, there's a potential downside. Their blind spot lies in overplanning and potentially missing opportunities for spontaneity or intuitive action.
Yeah, they can get so caught up in the strategy that they forget to actually play the game.
Yeah.
It's a good takeaway for the strategist to keep in mind.
Embrace flexibility, allow for some improvisation, and trust your gut instinct every now and then. It doesn't mean abandoning plans altogether, but rather recognizing that sometimes the best course of action isn't on the spreadsheet.
Now, you highlighted the bouncer, and I'm curious about this one. They seem like the total opposite of the strategist and how they approach things.
That's a keen observation. The bouncer is all about resilience. They bounce back from setbacks with incredible speed and determination. It's almost like negativity just slides right off them.
Like a rubber ball hitting a wall and bouncing right back the handbook. The handbook mentions their ability to quickly analyze what went wrong, learn from it, and move on with renewed focus.
Precisely. Their strength lies in their unwavering positivity and ability to maintain perspective. Setbacks are seen as temporary blips on the radar.
But if their resilience is so strong, what's the potential downside?
The blind spot for the bouncer is their tendency to suppress emotions. They bounce back so quickly that they might not fully process the experience or allow themselves to be vulnerable.
So they miss out on the emotional depth that can come from those tougher moments.
Exactly. So if you identify as the bouncer, a helpful tip is to pause and acknowledge those feelings, even the unpleasant ones. It's not about dwelling in negativity, but allowing yourself to experience the full spectrum of emotions.
Now, you also highlighted the denialist. What drew you to this archetype?
The denialist is interesting because they have this remarkable ability to cling to their beliefs even when faced with contradictory evidence.
Like sticking their fingers in their ears and going, "Oh," when someone tried to give them feedback.
Haha, you could say that the handbook gives that great example of the denialist not getting a job and then convincing themselves they didn't actually want it anyway.
That's like a self-protection mechanism, but how is that a strength?
Their unwavering conviction can be a strength, providing stability and resilience in the face of uncertainty, but their blind spot is their resistance to new information and perspectives.
So they might miss out on valuable learning experiences by refusing to see things from a different angle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you recognize yourself in the denialist, the key is to cultivate a bit of openness. Ask yourself, Am I clinging to this belief because it's truly serving me, or am I just afraid to let go?
Now, this next archetype wasn't specifically highlighted in your notes, but I think it resonates with the denialist in a certain way, the believer.
That's a fascinating connection. How so?
Well, both seem to have this strong sense of faith,
But
but the believer directs it towards a greater purpose, while the denialist might direct it towards maintaining their existing worldview.
that's an insightful observation. The believer approaches life with unshakable faith and optimism, finding meaning even in challenging times.
The handbook describes them seeing setbacks as tests of faith, or signs from a higher power.
Exactly. Their strength lies in their unwavering hope, which can be incredibly powerful when dealing with setbacks.
But there's always a flip side. What's their blind spot?
Their optimism, while a beautiful trait, can sometimes make them passive. They might wait for things to work out on their own instead of taking proactive steps.
So they're putting all their faith in the universe without putting in the work themselves.
In a sense, yes. So if you identify as the believer, the takeaway is to find that balance between faith and action. Trusting that a higher power is guiding you is wonderful, but it doesn't negate the need for your own efforts.
So instead of just waiting for a sign, the believer could ask, what action can I take that aligns with my faith and goals?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you have a role to play in shaping your own destiny, even with that unwavering belief in something greater.
Now we're nearing the end of our deep dive, but there are two archetypes we haven't explored yet. The blaze and the student weren't on your list, but they offer some interesting perspectives. Shall we take a quick peek at those?
Absolutely. I'm always up for exploring the nuances of human behavior.
Okay, so the blaze. What a name. I'm picturing someone with like a fiery personality.
That's a fitting image. The blaze is all about those intense, passionate reactions.
Oh.
They're quick to ignite both in enthusiasm and frustration.
Like a sudden burst of flame, as the handbook puts it.
Exactly. Now that intensity can be a real asset.
Okay,
They infuse their endeavors with passion and energy, motivating those around them.
I see.
That's their strength, unwavering commitment, and drive.
But I'm guessing that same intensity can also be their downfall?
You're right. Their blind spot lies in their lack of emotional regulation. They might explode in anger or make impulsive decisions without considering the consequences.
So for someone who identifies as the blaze, learning to harness that fire is key.
Absolutely. Developing strategies for managing their emotions would be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
Maybe taking a few deep breaths before reacting, or finding healthy outlets for that intense energy.
Great advice. Now, let's cool things down a bit and explore this last archetype. The student. I'm guessing they're all about, continuous learning and thoughtful planning.
You hit the nail on the head. The student approaches everything as a valuable lesson,
Yeah.
constantly seeking knowledge and understanding.
The handbook describes them meticulously analyzing their actions after a setback,
Right.
dissecting every decision to learn from it.
That's their strength in action, intellectual humility and commitment to self-improvement. They're open to feedback and always looking for ways to grow.
But if they're always analyzing, could that become a problem?
It can. Their blind spot is their tendency toward overthinking and analysis paralysis.
Okay.
They might get so caught up in planning and strategizing that they struggle to take action.
So they're stuck in their head, similar to the seeker, but for different reasons.
Yes, there are some parallels there. The seeker gets lost in their emotions while the student gets bogged down in the details.
Right.
For the student, the key is finding that balance between thoughtful planning and decisive action.
So instead of overanalyzing every possible outcome, maybe too, the student could focus on creating a basic plan and then adjusting it as needed.
Exactly. It's about embracing imperfection and recognizing that you don't need to have all the answers before you start moving.
So there you have it. We've explored all 12 Faller archetypes.
Yeah.
It's been quite the journey, wouldn't you say?
It really has. And remember, this isn't about labeling yourself or boxing yourself in. It's about using this framework as a tool for self-awareness and growth.
Exactly. Knowing your tendencies and potential blind spots empowers you to navigate those inevitable setbacks with more grace and resilience.
Now, here's a final thought for you to ponder. Think about one archetype that resonated with you the most today. What's one small change you can make to approach challenges more effectively using that newfound understanding?
Maybe you need to cultivate a bit more self-compassion, like the critic, or practice trusting your intuition, like the strategist, whatever it is. Remember that personal growth is a continuous journey.
And if you're eager to explore further, be sure to check out Tony Figali's website at fallerarchetypes.com. There's a quiz you can take to dive deeper into your own Faller archetype.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those deep dives going. We'll catch you on the next episode.